Hello, Larry Burns here, and welcome to another episode of Discovering the Power of You. Today, we not only have a Michigan leader, but also one of my good friends. Dave Coulter is the county executive in Oakland County, Michigan, and Dave and I used to work together at the Children's Foundation. And funny story, just to show you the kind of guy Dave Coulter is he was the mayor of Ferndale at the time, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but came into my office one day, closed the door, and indicated that he may have a chance to become the county executive in Oakland County. And was I okay with that? And I looked at him and I said, Dave, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Of course it's okay. But just the fact that he came in and told me that, rather than waiting until it was done, just exemplifies the kind of guy Dave Coulter is. And he's also my favorite politician. So welcome to Discovering the Power of You, Dave Coulter. Dave.
Larry, it is so great to see you, my friend. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for doing it. I know how busy you are running such a great county in Michigan, and I appreciate it very much. And talking about your journey, what I'd like you to do is tell our listeners a little bit about the journey to your current position. And I mentioned the story about you coming into my office. You were mayor of Ferndale at the time. And so let's hear a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, it wasn't a usual path to get to a job like county executive. In fact, politics can be very competitive, and there were other people who wanted this job. But as you said, I was the mayor of Ferndale, and the universe can sometimes throw a curveball that can affect you in ways that you can never imagine. And in my case, it was the fact that the current county executive in Oakland County, a guy by the name of L. Brooks Patterson, passed away. And his death created a vacancy in the job that the legislative branch had to fill. And there was some competition going on. I wasn't openly campaigning for the position. In fact, I had been, I had a good job working at the Children's Foundation, which I loved, and I had been thinking about running for the legislature. But some members of the legislative branch came to me, said they were kind of stuck on who they should nominate, but that they thought I could get unanimous support, which is what they needed. And so they came to me literally 2 days before they had to vote. They had 30 days to vote on an appointment, and they came to me literally 2 days before and said, would you be open to this? And we'll talk about this, I suppose, a little bit when we come to leadership styles, but I've always been one to be open to new opportunities. I think that's important, not to try to program your future too much, but to prepare yourself for the opportunities that sometimes miraculously come along. And that's how this one felt to me. And so that's, when I came to see you the next day and said, hey, this is an amazing, crazy opportunity that has presented itself, and I wanted to share it with you. And so I got the appointment. I had to resign as mayor. I only got 16 months. That's how much time was left in the term of my predecessor. And I quickly went to work being the county executive.
And you were very, very busy and did a great job. And the only bad part of that is that we missed you at the Children's Foundation once you left. But you've always been very loyal. It was so abrupt,
wasn't it, Larry? I mean, I missed you and all of the team as well. It was, one day I'm there. This happened on a Friday. I had to come in the office on Saturday and pack my desk, and and it was really tough. It was really tough to leave everybody behind so quickly. I couldn't even give you 2 weeks notice, Larry, because I had to get sworn in on Monday. But,
totally understood.
Yeah.
So I mentioned Ferndale, and you were mayor of Ferndale for quite a long time. Yeah. And so what are some of your memories about Ferndale? Ferndale is a very close-knit community from my view, with some cool stuff going on downtown. And what are some of your fond memories of being mayor of Ferndale?
Yeah, I loved being mayor of Ferndale. And if that's the last political job I would have ever had, I would have been okay with it. And what I loved about it was, before I was the mayor, I was in a legislative role. And what I realized when I became mayor was I liked that executive role. I liked to be the guy in charge. I liked to provide that kind of leadership. And so I really appreciated that about being mayor. And it's interesting because the similarities between my mayor job and the executive job are very similar. I was appointed mayor. My predecessor ran for another position during the middle of his term, won, and there was a vacancy in the job that I was appointed to. So, it's actually a repeat story. But even more ironic than that, in both positions, a crisis happened early on that I had to respond to quickly. When I became county executive, it was only a few months later that COVID hit, and the county government in Michigan oversees the health department. So quickly, I was responsible for the health response to COVID in Oakland County. Back in my mayor days, this was 2011, what happened within the first few months of my being mayor is there was a major power outage that affected the entire city during the middle of a heat wave where the temperatures were over 100 degrees. I asked the staff, what is our plans here? Do you have plans, and do we have cooling centers? Do we have ways to keep seniors safe and all that? They had never done that before. So on the fly, I had to lean in and work with our fire department and our police and get our seniors into a cooling center and get generators and all the like. And it just reminded me, and I know you know this as a leader as well, that a leader has to be able to expect the unexpected, because it can literally happen at any time. You have to have a good team to help you do it, but you've got to be ready to respond to crisis whenever it happens. And so the power outage, which lasted over a week in Ferndale, was a huge start to my tenure there. I was mayor there for 9 years, but there was a lot, that was an interesting but difficult memory. Some of the more fun stuff is, we have a very lively downtown in Ferndale, and two of my focuses were in the downtown and helping to bring businesses back to the city, be a place where businesses thought we were a friendly and successful place to be. And then parks. I'm a big parks guy. I believe in the power of parks in terms of our health and our mental health and the vibrancy of a community in our neighborhood. So I quickly dove into those two issues and took the lead on a lot of initiatives around parks and downtown development. And I'm very proud of the things that we were able to accomplish in those things, working together with our council and the residents of Ferndale.
Yes, and part of the parks was putting in a I might have it wrong, skateboard park.
Yep.
And I remember when it opened up, how happy you were. And that was very cool. I'm not a big skateboarder, obviously, or it would be clear. But you had one of the superstars there. And so that was a big accomplishment as well.
Tony Hawk, for skateboarders, is a big skateboard guy, and his foundation gave us some money. And yes, I was so happy and relieved when the skate park opened. And here's why, Larry. And I think this is a good leadership lesson. I, like you, am not a skateboarder. I had my doubts whether a skating park was the right use of this park that we had planned for other things. But the community seemed to want it. At least there was a loud contingency of skaters that wanted it. It wasn't clear to me if the community wanted it, but we did some community engagement around that. We worked with some folks. We took it very seriously. How would it work? What would the hours be? All the things I was worried about, neighbor complaints and the like. And as it turns out, it's one of the most popular things I did as mayor. People here love the skate park. It's used all the time. It's probably one of our most popular parks. So I guess what it taught me was I don't always have the right answer, but I think it's the job of a leader to make sure that you reach out to folks who are experts in their field and get that advice, get the community input, make sure that even if it's not something that you're totally familiar with, don't be closed to the idea. Don't jump into it, but don't be closed to it. And we did our homework on it, and it proved to be a huge success. And so I think that kind of flexibility in a leader, it proved helpful in that case for sure, because that's not the feature I would have initially put in our park.
No, that's a great example of your leadership skills and abilities. And I know that Ferndale was much better off because of you and your tenure there. So now, when I came to the Children's Foundation, at the time it was called the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.
Yep.
I interviewed with folks. I talked to the staff, and one of the things that one of the staff members brought up is that there's one staff member who also is the mayor of Ferndale, and will that be a problem with you if you become the president? And I said, problem? I said, the mayor of Ferndale being part of our family will only enhance us. And it proved to be so accurate. And so I took the job, and my main job was to try to reinvent the Children's Hospital Michigan Foundation and determine where we were going to go. And the reason we had to do that, as you well know, is that the Children's Hospital became a for-profit hospital with the purchase several years ago of the Detroit Medical Center. And so you and I started working on expanding the view and the sort of footprint of the foundation. And one other funny, I think, story is that not everybody on the staff felt that that I was going to be successful. And so one person who actually turned out to be extremely positive and is a very bright person, sort of doubted where we were going. And you came and you told her that, listen, Larry's not going anywhere. So you better get on board, because he's doing what the board wanted. And you, I think, brought the most partnership with me as a staff person in our efforts. You and I visited nonprofits around the state of Michigan, but particularly in Oakland County, Macomb County, a little bit in Wayne County. So let's talk a little bit about that. And did you enjoy you and I sort of being pioneers for this new initiative?
Well, I think, and Larry, I mean, you're right. We hit it off right away, because you knew and the board knew that change needed to happen. And I think any good leader needs to understand change is inevitable, and you can't stop it. What you can try to do is manage it, take advantage of the opportunities that change can bring you. But if you dig your heels in and just try to stop it and keep things the way they've always been, that seldom, if ever, works as a strategy. So I was happy, even before I had the first chance to meet you, that the board was looking for a change agent, because it was clear to me that, they were not going to be able to continue in the fashion that they had been, and that there was a real opportunity to expand the scope of the work. So when they hired somebody like you, very deliberately to change the direction, first of all, I knew there was going to be resistance, and there always is. There still is for me, and I've been the Oakland County executive now for 4 years, but my predecessor was here for 27. Change is still slow for some departments and for some people. They think they can just outlast you. But the reality is, our job, I think, as leaders, is to help people understand the change that's happening, the reason that change in the organization needs to come, and how they can benefit from those changes. And so clearly you outlasted those folks, because the board and even the staff and the community understood that this hospital foundation, this former hospital development department, frankly, could be a real asset in the community and across the state. And so you were, I would say, relentless with that vision. I give you a lot of credit, because even in the face of the doubters, and maybe you had a few of them on your own board, you were consistent. And I think that's another key quality of leadership, is to set that vision and consistently, not stubbornly, but consistently help move the organization in that direction. And that's, I remember that work very fondly. It wasn't easy, but it absolutely needed to happen. And for me, I wanted to be a part of going in the right direction versus trying to stay in the past.
Yeah, and you also helped me establish some relationships in Lansing, being mayor of Ferndale at the time, and not having a big political background. You were great help. So
well, and the reason the staff was so asked you that question is because the person that brought me into the foundation in the first place was really skeptical of that. And he actually had conversations with a few of the staff. Do you think that this is going to be a conflict? Is he going to be doing mayor stuff on our time, et cetera, et cetera? But he gave me a shot and he eventually understood, but he was very skeptical. So I think they wanted to make sure you weren't skeptical. But to your credit, and another one of the reasons I think we clicked right away is you saw the value in understanding the political landscape, and more so the policy landscape. What is, who are the players? Who are the people that we need to understand? What are the issues? If we're going to expand across the state, what are the different issues, especially in children's health, which was our focus at the time? And you saw that as an asset, and I obviously appreciated that.
Well, thank you very much. So speaking of change, you mentioned that your predecessor was there for well over 20 years, and you came in. And what are some of the things over the 4 years that you've been a great county executive that you're most pleased with or proud of so far?
It's been the job of a lifetime. So there's a lot of things that I'm happy with. I'm very proud of the way we got through COVID, which, we took very seriously. And I'm proud of the fact that I wasn't sure what an epidemiologist was before I became executive, Larry, but thank God we had 4 of them on staff, and they helped, along with our health officer and others, guide us through that. But the other thing, so that's a very specific thing, but a couple other things. One of the things that I saw when I got there was that this was an organization where the employees weren't particularly empowered. They've done things the same way for decades. They didn't measure a lot of things. There wasn't, in my view, enough accountability. And I knew that I had to be a change agent. And I wanted to empower employees to be able to be their best selves on behalf of our residents. I'm going to give you a perfect example. I was in the job less than a week. And I got an emergency call that I had to come down to the conference room. It was from someone in our comms area. And they said, we need you right away. And so I came down, even though I was very busy at the time. And they had laid out, we did a magazine at the time, Larry, and they laid out 5 different magazine covers on the table. And I looked at them all. The magazine was called Prosper. And I looked at them all, and they proceeded to describe to me what they were trying to convey with each different design of the 5. So I listened and I nodded and I got it. And then they stopped, and then the conversation ended, and they just looked at me and they said, okay. And I said, I turned to the person next to me and I said, okay, so what's next? What do you need? Well, this is where Brooks Patterson would pick the design that he liked the best. And I said, really? How much am I paying you to be a designer? You don't even have an opinion. Tell me what you think. I know what I think is attractive, but tell me what you think. And they were kind of stunned by that because they had not been asked that kind of a question before. That's just this. And so we talked it through, and I think I ultimately did. Probably once we got it down to 2, I think I might have picked the last one, but it's a simple story to say, I knew I had a big job of creating an organization. And we have 5,000 employees. So it takes a long time to change the culture in a place that big. But I knew that I needed people who knew how to make a decision, or at least make a recommendation on a decision. I don't want just order takers and people who just do what they told very reactively. And that's what we had. And I wanted to empower, especially at the leadership level, people who could make decisions and give advice and were willing to take some risks on behalf of the organization. And I continue to lean into that. We're not done with that yet, but we've come a long way.
Excellent. So as I grew up in the Grosse Pointe area. My father was an attorney and had a lot of clients in Oakland County. Yeah. And one of the communities that at a really young age I was familiar with was Pontiac, Michigan. And Pontiac was, at that time, this was in the early 60s, mid 60s. Pontiac was pretty vibrant. It had a lot of things going on. And then over the last many decades, my words, Pontiac became not so vibrant, and a lot of issues and And almost, Oakland, again, my opinion, Oakland County is very vibrant. You have Troy, you have Somerset, you have all the great things going on. But Pontiac was sort of this community that, people didn't really get excited about. But recently, there is excitement, and it's because of your decision to invest in Pontiac, I think, along with the state of Michigan. And so can you tell our viewers and our listeners about that whole Pontiac movement?
Yeah, thanks. I'm very excited about it. And you're right. Oakland County is a very successful and prosperous county. It's the wealthiest county in Michigan and one of the wealthiest in the country, frankly. But Pontiac, which is our county seat, it is the seat of county government, has fallen on hard times. You hit it on the head. It's had a lot of disinvestment. General Motors used to be a major employer in Pontiac. They're now gone. Oakland County government used to be a major employer in downtown Pontiac back in the 60s, in the time you're talking about. But they moved all the county employees out of the downtown. And so it's fallen on hard times. But it's slowly coming back. There's been development. There have been some interest. United Wholesale Mortgage, Williams International, some major companies have come back to town. But there's still help it needs, especially in its downtown. So we had an opportunity to purchase a couple of office buildings and a parking deck in downtown Pontiac. And this opportunity was really just by chance, a once in a lifetime opportunity because of the dollars from the federal government for COVID that all states and counties and local governments received. The state of Michigan is sitting on a lot of money. So I put a plan together that said, look, I don't have enough to buy these buildings on my own. But if the state would make a commitment with me, we have some monies to do it. We put in $10 million. But if the state would put in a significant amount of money, we could buy this office complex, which is just on the south edge of downtown. And I think, and put office workers, county workers in these buildings, fill it up, redo this area, liven the streets with food carts and all the things that people, are interested in. And the key is not just, for the taxes and filling up a vacant building, but Pontiac has struggled with restaurants and bars and shops because there's not enough foot traffic, especially during the day. There's just not enough people to make them successful. So we committed to bringing at least 500 county employees downtown Pontiac. I think there'll be a spin-off investment from that as well. I think there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands of employees that will follow our lead, come to downtown Pontiac and help us to revitalize that downtown. And I don't know if it was the county executive in me or the mayor in me, because as you know, Ferndale back in the day was a little sleepy as well. But I saw the same kind of potential in our county seat, Pontiac, that I saw in Ferndale decades ago. And so we convinced the legislature to give us $55 million towards this project. And we're gonna refurbish these buildings, fill them up, and bring workers back to downtown Pontiac like there were back in the 60s, like you and I remember.
Yes, that's awesome. I also think with the expansion of people living farther north in Oakland County and then Genesee County or what have you, that when this is done, this will be a desired location for people to work at, because it'll be certainly closer than downtown Detroit, but closer than maybe what they're dealing with now. So I think I commend you for that. I think it's a wonderful idea.
And on that point, Larry, I would just say, I do think it'll be a magnet to attract people, and maybe not people like me. I think the real potential, we have a problem in Michigan of keeping and attracting young workers and families here. Michigan's population is not growing at the rate other states are. Oakland's population, it goes up a little bit, but not enough. And what we've seen, like with the redevelopment of Detroit and other major cities, is young people and young families, they want an urban experience. They want a walkable, urban, vibrant, cool place to be. And I think that's one of the things that Oakland County doesn't really have. We don't have a Detroit. We don't have a Grand Rapids. So Pontiac can be, I believe, our urban destination, especially to help keep our younger people from leaving the state or to attract young people to Oakland County and Michigan.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. So the podcast, Discovering the Power of You, is designed to talk to leaders like you, people that are successful in their personal and professional life, but also talk about maybe obstacles that they've gotten over during their journey, mentors, how important that is. And so if you don't mind, you talk a little bit about mentors, if you've had any or many, and then any obstacles that you've overcome that might be inspiring for somebody listening and watching.
Yeah, I think having mentors as a leader or somebody who wants to be a leader someday is just critical. And I'm not sure I even called them mentors at the time, but looking back now, I realized that there's a number of people who have played the role of mentor to me. Two of them come to mind, although one of them isn't an individual, it's sort of a group of people. And I think you know this about me, Larry, but when I was growing up, I loved to play sports. Baseball was my favorite sport, but I played other ones as well. And as I think back to the coaches that I had, and by the way, my dad was one of my coaches. He was my Little League coach for several years. So I put him in this category of coaches as well as, you know, my mentor as a dad. But the coaches that I had really impacted me. They taught me they helped me bring out the best in myself, how to be the best athlete I could be, even though I was never going to be a star athlete. I was never going to be a professional athlete. But they helped me to bring out the skills that I had. And then they also taught me how to be on a team, right? Sportsmanship, how to play a role on a team, and figure out what your lane is and your contribution is, and how sometimes you're going to lead, and then sometimes you're going to step back and let someone else lead, and that, you know, there's sort of an orchestra effect that happens on really good high production teams. So I you know, when I think of the people that really informed me, the wisdom that I learned that I didn't even realize at the time that I was learning from these coaches was really important to me. And then I would just say, in my political life, there's a gentleman. He's still with us, thank God, but he's a longtime congressman from the Oakland and Macomb County areas. His name is Sandy Levin. Sander is his official name, but everybody calls him Sandy. And he had a long and successful career in politics. He rose to become the chair of the Ways and Means Committee in the House, which is probably the most important and powerful committee in the House. But he also had setbacks. He ran for governor of Michigan and lost. But I studied him. I studied the way he approached politics, the way he dealt with people, the integrity that he brought, both the competitiveness that he had, but also the compass that he had to always do the right things the right way, or at least the right things that as he believed them, but to do them the right way. And so he taught me a lot about how to be a public servant and to do this job with integrity and consistency. So I would say Sandy Levin has been a huge political mentor of mine.
Great examples. And certainly you have an election year coming up. And what are you most excited about for the next of this year and then into next year for Oakland County?
So when I first ran for office 20 years ago, I was green and I thought I knew everything, but I really didn't. But one of the things I used to say all the time is, Metropolitan Detroit needs transit. We are the largest and almost the only region in the country that doesn't have some sort of transit system. And unfortunately, 20 years later, that continues to be the problem. That continues to be the case. And it's a problem in our region. And I think it holds us back from attracting talent and businesses to the state. I think it's one of the reasons we lost out on the Amazon headquarters, for instance, and why we struggle to get young people here. But I am still committed to trying to expand transit in this region. And I'm working together with my counterparts in the region at Macomb County, Wayne County, and the city of Detroit. And I believe that over the course of, if I'm fortunate enough to get another term, that over the course of the next 4 years, we will be taking significant steps towards rolling out actual transit services in Southeast Michigan that we've never been able to get across the finish line before, in part because my predecessor was not a huge fan, certainly not as much as I am, of these kinds of services. And so I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation around transit and bringing it to metropolitan Detroit if at all possible. And I believe it is possible.
Yeah, I think it's possible too. As you know, I'm living in Stuart, Florida now, and so South Florida. And almost every day there's updates on what they call the Bright Line.
Yep.
That'll eventually connect Miami to Orlando with many stops along the way. And they feel that that will just generate more and more growth in the communities that they serve. So I think mass transit, public transit would be ideal for Southeastern Michigan. And I think you're right on it. And your leadership, if anyone can get it done, I know that you can.
No.
And so, Dave, is there anything else you want our viewers and listeners to know about Dave Coulter or about Oakland County?
Wow, this has been a very comprehensive and, for me, a fun interview, Larry. Trying to think if we've missed anything. I mean, I will say this. You and I both went to Catholic parochial school back in the day, right? And
Correct.
It's not necessary, obviously, to leadership, but we've shared a lot of stories about, you've shared your Austin stories with me, and I've shared with you some of mine. And at the time, I felt it was kind of constraining, but looking back, I think of a lot of the lessons that I learned there. But I guess one of the things I would say is, I don't talk about my faith in this job. It's not really, it's not really appropriate. I represent a lot of people of all kinds of faiths and no faiths. But and I know I say this because I know that you're this way as well, Larry, that I think it's important for any leader to understand what their values are, to really be clear with yourself. Write them down if it makes sense. This is what I believe. These are the red lines that I won't cross, because you're going to get tested. And there's going to be things that could potentially come up that could make you bend those. And you don't want to bend them. So you want to be confident in your own mind what your values are, what your beliefs are, and that those are the red lines that guide you. And I think you'll be more successful long term if those are clear in your mind. Would you agree with that, my friend?
I totally agree. And for our listeners that don't know, you mentioned I went to Austin Catholic Prep, and you went to Bishop Gallagher. They were both on the east side, and both very successful and great places with a lot of wonderful alumni like Dave Coulter. And so, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. And most importantly, thank you for being my friend. And you're doing a wonderful job. And everyone that I talk to, if they ask me about Dave Coulter, I'll say he's a great leader. And I also add he's a gentleman. And I think that's extremely important, particularly in today's environment. So thank you.
Well, it's very kind of you to say. And Larry, I just want you to know, I wish you all the success in this next chapter that you're taking. I'm glad to see that you didn't just go to Florida and retire and play with the dogs and spend more time with your wife, although I know you get to do a little bit more of that. Yeah. But I'm so glad that you found another channel to bring your experience and your expertise to the market, to people who need it. So congratulations and best of luck on your next chapter.
Thank you very much. As you mentioned earlier, change is important.
Yeah.
Reinventing myself at age 67. So thanks. I'll keep you posted. So thanks, Dave Coulter, and good luck for everything you're doing.
Thank you.